Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Kenton Cool. He's a world-leading mountaineer, adventurer, speaker. He has summited Everest 18 times. Kenton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much. No, quite excited by this one. So, really interested to see where we go today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you don't have as much of a focus on Latin America as such, but you're an adventurer. You do cool adventure stuff, and we love hearing about it. So I guess I didn't see it anywhere in the bio, but you've probably done some mountains in Latin America?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I first came down to that neck of the woods 2004. I suppose to an extent, it depends a little bit on what you define as a Latin America. I spent considerable time this year in Argentina.
Nice.
I've been climbing in Bolivia. I've been in and around Uruguay a little bit. So it's always a pleasure to visit that part of the world. The people are fantastic. The food's great. The culture's intriguing. The history is very deep. I've only just scratched the surface of some of the history of that part of the world. And whenever I go, I genuinely come back with a bit of a smile on my face and come home and say, as a family, we need to visit. I mean, we have something we call the Cool Family Big Adventure. Every 2 years, we go on an adventure of some description with meaning. We head off with the family, and it's not simply a beach holiday. It's okay, how can we immerse ourselves a little bit? And definitely Latin America is on that radar. We've not done it yet, but we're going to be down there in the not too distant future, I hope.
Yes, South America, obviously a big part of Latin America. What was the 18-time Everest summiter? What were you doing in Argentina? Were you summiting mountains? Were you drinking?
It's mountains, obviously. I mean, 2004, it was Patagonia. I went down to attempt Cerro Torre, which in my mind is probably the hardest mountain in the world to climb. I mean, there's no easy way up
How do you spell it? I got to look this up.
Cerro Torre, Cerro, Torre must be T-O, I should know this, Torra. I mean, it's this immense rock.
Cerro Torre. Okay. Torre means tower.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it really is a finger of rock that is quite often ice encrusted. It's got a renowned sort of summit ice mushroom, which can be the crux of the whole route. Surrounded in controversy and mystery over its first ascent, Maestri, the Italian climber, claimed the first ascent, but it was rebuffed, and then he went back and controversially put up a route called the compressor route, because he actually had a compressor with him, and he put 200 or so bolts in it, which for the non-climbers amongst us, if you place a bolt into a rock, it's there as pretty much a permanent feature, and you can overcome almost any obstacle with a bolt. The Italian climber Reinhold Messner called bolts murder of the impossible. Cerro Torre is this just an immense feature down near El Charlton, part of the Fitzroy Massif. And that was my first foray into climbing down in Argentina. We got our butts kicked. We didn't climb it. It was quite an epic trip for all the right and wrong reasons. But that was my first little foray into Argentina, and then since then I've been back a number of times to climb Aconcagua, which is the highest peak in sort of South America. It's one of the 7 summits.
How do you spell that one?
Aconcagua. This one always trips me up. Acon. I think it's Auga. Aconcagua. I'm going to be lambasted not the name right.
Okay.
So it's near Mendoza. It's right on the Chilean border.
Yeah.
It is completely in Argentina, but just. It's like an hour away from the border,
Yep.
and this is a very different proposition to Serratore. It's much easier. It's a higher mountain, but it's a much easier mountain to climb. It's more of a high altitude walk. It's literally only probably in the last 2 meters of its climb where you actually need to use your hands, and the rest of the time you can essentially trek up there. But for the wannabe climber, I mean, it's a fantastic mountain to climb. You get to hang out in Mendoza, which I don't know if you've been down to Mendoza. I mean, it's a super vibrant city. It's got a great culture down there, like cafe culture, and it's fantastic wine. The food is off the charts again, super friendly. So for me as a mountain guide, to be able to go down there with clients, it's relatively stress-free. Was in theory nobody should be dying on that mountain, and it's just a lovely, lovely place to guide. It's got good infrastructure there. It's got a really great community, which which they very kindly embrace the foreign guide. People like me going down there with our clients, and it's super
Sure.
friendly. And it is a challenging climb. It's just under 7,000 meters. So you do need your wits about you. It can be very cold, can be very windy. So I shouldn't underplay it, but it's a fantastic summit. And of course, it is one of the 7 summits. It's the highest point. In actual fact, it's the highest point in the Americas. And yeah, I was down there twice this year, and super fond memories. I was down in January and again in February. So yeah, it's fun. It's super fun. And if any of your
Yeah.
listeners are even thinking about climbing something in sort of South America, then that's a really good one to aim towards. It's fab. I mean, but that we shouldn't just brush over the rest of the Andes. I mean, I've not climbed in Peru yet, but I've climbed in Ecuador, I've climbed in Bolivia, and my memories of all of these places is one of the same. It's one of joy
That's
and fun.
awesome. Well, I want to come back to that. I want to just give people a bit more of a high level as we kind of kick off the episode, and then I'll come back and maybe ask more specifically about mountaineering in Latin America. So, as we mentioned, you've summited Everest 18 times. You're one of the world's leading mountaineers. You're also a public speaker. I think you go around to universities and different groups and give talks about mindset and motivation and stuff like that. Um, could you give us kind of like a brief overview of how you got into this and in your career?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, perhaps I was a little bit late to get into climbing. I was my main sport at school was hockey, field hockey. I was deeply ingrained in that, playing for the local club, playing for the county, playing for the school. And it wasn't really until, university that I found climbing. I had been climbing. A good friend at school, he was a climber. His father climbed, and I kind of begged this guy. He's called Andy Fowkes. I kind of begged him to take me to the local climbing wall one day. And we have to remember this was back in the 90s, and climbing walls weren't quite what they are today. But I loved it. I absolutely loved the physical challenge. And after a few visits to the local climbing wall, we decided that because Andy had a car or had access to a car, which you don't necessarily need a car for adventure, but it certainly helps facilitate getting from A to B to C.
Yeah.
And we basically took his mum's car, went down to the south coast on the UK, where there's some fantastic sea cliff climbing, where the cliffs literally just come out from the sea. And we had a weekend. I was 17 or so, and we had a weekend rock climbing, and the combination of the physicality of it, trying to unlock the puzzle of the rock climb, the techniques of handling the rope, placing the protection. And what I mean by protection is you can put little metal wedges and camming devices into the rock, into the cracks in the rock. So if you fall off, in theory, you're not going to hit the floor. You're not going to die. This was all new, and I loved it. I loved sort of unlocking the puzzle. And of course, you're outside, and I grew up just outside London. I mean, people say to me, if they don't know the UK very well, where did you grow up? I say London, but it was just on the outskirts of London, and it was in the corner of a farm, on a corner of a farm. It wasn't our farm, but it gave me access to the outside or the outdoors. So I loved the outdoors. So combining like a new sport with being in the outside, being next to the sea, and the nuances that climbing above the sea brings, and it was just intoxicating. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And that went. We did a couple of climbing trips together before we finished school. We took our final exams at school, and that summer between school and going to university, we planned a trip to the European Alps. We planned a trip to the French Alps, and we went off there together. There was 4 of us, all about the same age, all pretty naive. We got away with it. We had a what you would call an alpine season, climbing in and around Chamonix in France, which is a bit of a mecca for climbers. It's in the shadow of Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Western Europe. And again, I just found the whole adventure mind-blowing. It was just fabulous. It was everything that I could have wished for. And that was kind of where it started. The bug was definitely in me, but my focus was still on my hockey. And then the following September, I went to Leeds University, and that's where it kicked off. And it's probably worth explaining why. And it was the cohort of people. I mean, we'll probably keep coming back to this right throughout this chat, because for me, it's the community that things give you. It's the same with my hockey. I mean, I found a community within the hockey that I really vibe with. And then with climbing, it was the same. It was a group of like-minded individuals. And at Leeds University, there was this energy around the climbing club, because you go to the university, you join all these clubs, you try to find where your tribe is, be it the hockey or be it whatever it may be, the astronomy club, the physics club. I joined the climbing club, and it was to give you an idea about the energy and the enthusiasm of this cohort of people. I'm a fully trained international mountain guide. We wear this little ridiculously small pin badge for how much work and effort and money goes into it. It's the IFMGA, and there's a number of countries in actually Latin America, Argentina, Bolivia, Ecuador. They all have their guides.
Climbing clubs.
Well, more than that, we all wear the same badge, so we all essentially go through the same set of assessments,
training,
and
certifications.
Exactly. So it is the global ticket. But there's only about 140 of us in the UK with this ticket. There's not very many of us, and 5 of us were at Leeds University at the same time. It's just incredible, and we're still active today. We're still in contact with one another. So that gives you an idea about the energy behind the climbing club, and it was impossible not to get swept up in that. And we were doing all sorts of stuff. We were climbing in Scotland every summer. A big group of us would go down to the European Alps and just have a blast down there. But we were climbing every opportunity, and that's where it really kicked off. I love the community. I love the ethos of it. I love the slightly anarchistic rule breaking mentality of this community. I just thought it was amazing. I just loved it, and wanted to be a big part of it. And my hockey kind of dropped off the radar a little bit. I was doing less and less hockey and more climbing, to the extent that eventually I dropped hockey completely and just focused on the climbing, probably to the detriment of my studies. And that's where it really kicked off. By the time I left university 3 years later, I'd organized one Himalayan trip. I'd been to Pakistan. I was in the throes of organizing another trip to As soon as I finished university, I went to Nepal on another expedition, and that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to travel, to have the adventure, and climbing to me seemed to be the way to do that. Climbing gave me the purpose to travel, and in reality, I've not looked back since.
Hmm. And I believe the first person to summit Everest was Sir Edmund Hillary, who's also British, right?
Well, he was actually a Kiwi, so I mean, don't get me started on Everest history. I could talk for literally for hours about Everest history. It's my geek thing within me. We all have this thing that we're massively interested in.
Uh-huh.
Mine is Everest history for obvious reasons, and oddly military history. But that's for a different podcast.
Okay.
So the 1953 Everest expedition, which was the successful one, it was a British endeavor. Most of the sort of climbing members were British, but there were two guys from New Zealand. There was Sir Edmund Hillary, or Edmund Hillary at the time, and George Lowe. And it was the combination of Edmund Hillary and actually Sherpa Tenzing, who made the first ascent on the 29th of May,
Hmm.
1953. The first British person to actually stand on the summit wasn't until 1975, and that
Wow.
was Doug Scott and Dougal Haston. But generally, when you think of the first ascent of Everest, you genuinely think it was a British endeavour. It was put together by the Himalayan Committee. That was an amalgamation of the Royal Geographical Society and the Alpine Club, both of which are London-based
Hmm.
institutions. But the actual summiteers were a man
Okay,
from
I
New
didn't know
Zealand.
he was Kiwi. Gotcha.
Yeah, he was Kiwi. And then the really interesting thing with Sherpa Tenzing, Tenzing Norgay, is that there is some confusion about his nationality. My understanding, he was born in Tibet, but at a very young age moved to the Khumbu region of Nepal, which is in the shadow of Everest. He grew up in Kumjum, which is a little village that is just above Namche Bazaar, the Sherpa capital. But at the time, he was living in Darjeeling in India. And once he had successfully summited, all three nations were claiming Tenzing as their own. So the Indians were saying, well, he's Indian, and the Nepalese were saying, well, he's he's one of us. And I mean, the Tibetans were less vocal because they were dealing with the invasion of China at the time, and the somewhat sort of eradication of their culture by the Chinese invasion of 1950. But a little bit of confusion of where Hillary, where Tenzing actually originated from, and the really fascinating thing, to try to bring this back a little bit to sort of South America, Latin America, is on one of my trips to Bolivia. So I used to go to Bolivia pretty regularly with clients, and we used to do we still, when I go back, we still do the same thing. We do little cultural tours. So we in Bolivia would go to La Paz and then go out to Copacabana on the shores of Lake Titicaca, and then go to what's known as the Sun Island. And I used to employ this this fabulous lady who was deeply steeped in the history of pre-Inca and all these sorts of things, and she's deeply spiritual. I'm
Hmm.
completely spacing her name, and she's a lovely lady. And we were having this quite philosophical talk about the energy of the earth and the
Hmm.
importance of what this means. And she said, well, the energy, the central core of this earth's energy used to be positioned in the Himalayas in sort of Southeast Asia. And she wasn't too specific exactly where, but you got the Himalayas is this sort of focal point of this energy, but it moves over time and it displaces itself around the Earth. It's not a static thing. And she said, "Oh, and it's currently in the Andes. This is where this energy is currently centered."
Hmm.
But the move takes some time. But what we do know is that this energy had totally moved and was situated in the Andes in 1953. And I just remember looking at her, and my jaw hit the floor. I said, I forget what her name is. Let's call her Rebecca. And I'm like, Rebecca, you do understand the significance of 1953 with the Himalayas, don't you? And she's like, no. Well, what is it? I said, well, 1953 was the year that the Everest was first summited. The first time that man stood on top of the highest point in the Himalayas was 1953. And you're telling me that is when the final shift of this energy force arrived into the Andes. And one can't help but think that somehow these were connected, and that by standing on the roof of the world, this was the final chapter in this move of this energy field. Now, I don't know if your audience is, perhaps as spiritual as this lady, or perhaps as spiritual as me, because I'm not a religious man, but I do believe in spirituality. I do believe that there is things like energy lines and ley lines, and there's so much we don't understand about our planet still. So to hear this energy shift, it blew my mind, and somehow for me connected 1953 and Tenzing and Hillary standing on top of the world, and how it connects, even sort of subconsciously with the Andes, and this could be an actual thing. It was amazing, and that just shows that there is so much that we don't know still.
Tell me about the Royal Geographic Society. I think it's
Yeah.
a really interesting organization. I'm Canadian, so we have the Royal Canadian Geographic Society, and they've been very vital in the exploration of the Arctic and the mapping of the seafloor and a million different things, right?
Yeah.
And what's cool is, at least historically, I think they, and even today, so 100 years plus, they help sort of fund expeditions. They put their stamp on expeditions to give them a little bit more gravitas, I guess, and then maybe that helps get a critical mass of participants and things like that. So they've been hugely helpful, and it's a cool thing, right? It's like prestigious and all this. Tell me a little bit about maybe your relationship with them.
Yeah, so I mean, it's exactly the same in the UK. I'm guessing. I don't know, so forgive me if my assumptions are wrong, but I'm guessing that the Canadian version probably sprang out of the one in London, the
Hmm.
RGS in London. And I am a fellow of the RGS in London, so I'm going to be completely lambasted by saying I don't actually know how old it is. I should know that, but I'm guessing probably 150 years old or so. And it stands for exactly the same things, exactly what you just mentioned there. It supports expeditions. It puts its seal of approval on expeditions, as long as it's got a exploratory feel to it.
Hmm.
I interviewed on my own podcast, the Cool Conversation. I interviewed a British photographer only on Tuesday, and he had just come back from being in the Arctic, where he was on a research vessel looking for new species, under the Arctic Ocean,
Wow.
and we're bringing up some of these new species from around some of the hydrothermal vents that are at the bottom of the ocean, and that's exactly the sort of thing that the RGS get behind. Martin, again, is another fellow of the RGS. Many of his expeditions have been supported or seal of approval put onto them,
Hmm.
and the RGS in the UK, which has these amazing premises right next to the Royal Albert Hall in London. I mean, it's amazing premises, and they've got a incredible archive, an incredible library. They've got a theatre facility. You can rent out some of the meeting rooms. And their whole premise is to support exploration, to go out to the wilderness and bring knowledge back, which is then shared. And you can look back in time, and they have supported and helped and given advice to a myriad of expeditions,
Anywhere
including
from Africa to like everywhere, right?
everywhere. But at the bottom of the seabed, like Martin's been doing. They were heavily involved with the 1953 Everest expedition.
Mm-hmm.
So the 53 Everest expedition was kind of governed, for want of a better word, by the Himalayan Committee, which was, as I say, an amalgamation of the RGS and the Alpine Club.
Mm-hmm.
And then today, it's conservation in Africa. It's
Killed a
exploration.
mosquito there, if anyone heard
Did,
that.
did you get him?
Yeah, I got it.
Good shot. It's medicine. It's you name it, they've got their fingers on it. And it's a wonderful source of knowledge. You can go there and ask to be connected to other people that perhaps have been to whatever area it is, or they have an expertise in that field. It's fantastic.
And so you're a fellow, and I read that for the audience that doesn't know, this is pretty cool. You get to use I think it's called post-nominal letters,
the FRGS.
FRGS. Have you been rocking that?
I'm a little bit. I certainly don't use them. I mean, in theory, you can. I could be Kenton Cool FRGS, but I mean, in reality, I've got to be a bit careful what I say, don't I? But I think anybody that uses that as a suffix to their name, I think it says something about the individual.
A little
maybe
cheesy a bit, something like
yeah.
that. I mean, I'd be down. I'd be down. I'd be rocking it.
I mean, it's not like getting a knighthood, or in the UK we have various like awards can be given to individuals for sporting achievements or medical achievements, or MBE, OBE, CBE, like member of the British Empire, Order of the British Empire. I think CBE might be Commodore of the British Empire,
Commander.
So and these accolades aren't given because to be a member / fellow of the RGS, you don't need to do too much amazing stuff. You can apply, you can be nominated, seconded, and you've got to pay like $100 a year or something to keep that current. So to put those names,
how did that go for you? Did you apply, or did they kind of just give it to you at one point?
Well, I wish they had given it. I was holding out for them to give it to me. I'm a little bit anti-establishment, and I don't really conform to these things. But I finally got pushed into it. I forget. I think my PA secretary, this lovely girl Sarah that works in the office with us, she's like, "Listen, it's going to add gravitas to what we do, and if you are a fellow of the RGS." So I joined. Sarah's a member. My wife's a member. I'm still hanging out for the knighthood.
Hey guys, quick break from the podcast to tell you about job stacking. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltze, author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income by implementing his paycheck multiplication layering method. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond $20K a month. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, if you're interested in unleashing your earning potential and doubling your income, then click the link in the description and book a call with Rolf right now. Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about BitRefill. BitRefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. BitRefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information.
Yeah, I'd be down. Yeah, we have a version of some of this stuff in Canada. They have the Order of Canada and stuff like
Same.
that.
If you do something remarkable for charity, or so say you're a leading figure in business, or whatever it may be, certainly in the UK they hand out these awards. Not the right word. I'm trying to think what the right terminology for it is. Distinction or whatever. Yeah. And it's really interesting. I mean, we go back to the Everest thing, and I think this is slightly relevant to an extent to today and the culture that we're in. So the leader of the 53 expedition was John Hunt. Obviously, the summiteers were Sherpa Tenzing and Edmund Hillary. John Hunt and Edmund Hillary were both given knighthoods. That's the highest distinction you can be given. But Tenzing wasn't given one. He was given some other distinction, not a knighthood. And you can't help but think that was some form of discrimination going on there, because he wasn't one of the climbing party that was so under the sort of RGS or distinction such as that. So that even though if you read Hillary's book, The First Ascent of Everest, not Hillary's book, John Hunt's book, he talks about the teamwork that was required. I mean, I think there was 13 or 14 Western climbers. There was some 28 high altitude Sherpas working on it, of which Tenzing was one. And, he talks about the synergy and the teamwork required to put those two people on the top. Yet the recognition perhaps wasn't equally distributed afterwards. So that's certainly come up in more recent times. People were saying, well, if that were today, would Tenzing have got a knighthood? And you have to say almost certainly yes.
Yeah, I've always been a really big fan of going back to like the British Victorian era explorers in the 1800s.
Oh my God! How amazing were they?
I think my favorite guy wasn't so much a mountaineer, but my favorite guy is Sir Richard Francis Burton, who discovered the source of the Nile. He was the first person to go disguised to Mecca, disguised as a Muslim. He was one of my favorite guys. He was a polyglot as well, and did like tons of crazy stuff. But there's kind of like this long line of Brits that have made an impact towards geographical and scientific knowledge, right, and adventure. Do you kind of think of yourself in this long line of British explorers?
The short answer is no. I mean, I would love to be put into that category, but I don't think there's I don't think I deserve to be put there. I mean, if you look at what it took to embark on a venture like that back then compared with today, I mean, just the duration. I mean, if we keep it in terms of climbing, because obviously that's my expertise. I mean, if you look at the early trips to Everest, the 1921 reconnaissance trip, the 1922, the real first attempt on Everest, they were leaving London in February. And they would travel by steamer to down to what was then Calcutta. They then travel overland to Darjeeling. They would then trek for many weeks to round to the north side of Everest into Tibet. I mean, the undertakings were colossal. Not getting back to the UK till late August or even September. So that's like seven months being on an expedition. I came back from Everest only 2.5 weeks ago. My Everest expedition was a month long. We flew there. We then helicoptered into Namche Bazaar. We trekked for only 7 days, and those early explorers, the hardships that they had to go through just to undertake, just to get to where they wanted to go, it's staggering, and often going off the map. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but literally going into stepping into the complete unknown. You don't know what you're going to find there. You don't know who you're going to find there. it just is on a different level. It's like, I mean, let's try and make an analogy. It would be like me playing, football in the lowest local division compared with like a Premiership player. It's chalk and cheese.
So
Yeah,
let's talk a little bit about mountaineering because I do want to learn a little bit about these things. A lot of people kind of off the cuff say like, "Oh, I want to climb the seven summits one day," but I don't think people really realize what is involved in doing all that, right? So
yeah.
I imagine you lead these tours with and expeditions with people who have very little experience with mountaineering, and maybe they show up with tennis shoes or not the right equipment type of thing. What are some common mistakes people make, or how should people kind of get prepared?
Well, I mean, for most people, if they're engaging someone like myself, then there's quite a lot of preparation beforehand. So let me just give you an example. I mean, if we use Everest as the as the mountain that we're going to go and
Uh-huh.
attempt, it's normally the engagement normally occurs 2 or even 3 years beforehand,
Oh wow.
and then I spend that period of time prepping that individual, so that they are competent technically, they're competent with the physicality of it, their mental preparation. I take care of nutrition, equipment, and all that sort of thing. So by the time we get to Everest, that individual should be fully prepped. I mean, chances are we've even been to the area, they've met some of the Sherpa team we'll be working with. So we are fully prepped. But you are right. Climbing is one of these amazing sports whereby, there are climbing clubs, there are permits that you need to get. There is a certain amount of protocol that one would expect you to undertake. However, if you want to go to a mountain with no experience, without a mountain guide like myself, the sport almost embraces that. It's one of these weird things with climbing whereby, it's phenomenally dangerous, but the community, generally champions the underdog. They love nothing more than an individual or a small team snatching victory from the jaws of defeat because they're woefully underprepared. Now, I'm not necessarily endorsing that approach, but boy, the community, and there's a really good example of this. Let me tell you a lovely, true anecdotal story from Everest. This is
Sure.
1933, I think, and there's a guy called Maurice Wilson. He's never climbed before. He's a survivor of the Great War. He's never climbed before. He's never been in an aeroplane before, and he conjures this idea that what he wants to do is fly to Everest. Land, read crash his plane on the slopes of Everest, leap out, and then climb to the summit and become the first person to summit Everest. Despite the fact he's never been in an airplane and he's never climbed before. So to his credit, he learns to fly. He manages to get this rich woman to buy him I think it was a Gypsy Moth, de Havilland Gypsy Moth airplane. He then promptly flies from the UK all the way to India. Yeah, you imagine doing that. I mean, that in itself is an amazing adventure in 1933. As he flies all the way to India, the British are in hot pursuit because they learn of his plans and they don't want him to illegally enter Tibet because the political situation between Tibet and England is hanging by a thread. So they're trying to chase him down. They catch him in North India somewhere. They impound his plane, but he escapes. He then gets himself to Darjeeling somehow, buys a disguise, and he leaves Darjeeling under nightfall, dressed as a Tibetan monk with a couple of local guys with him. He then treks all the way through Tibet, gets to the north side of Everest, and has pretty spirited attempt climbing Everest. He gets to about 6,800 meters which doesn't sound that high, but that's the height of the highest point in South America.
Mhm.
Now, and the guy's got no experience at all. I mean, it's phenomenal. Unfortunately, he dies in the process. And the next British expedition that goes there under the leadership of Eric Shipton find his body. And there can be no better memory for Maurice Wilson than what Eric Shipton said of him. Eric Shipton was a great Himalayan British explorer come climber. And Shipton said this of Maurice Wilson: well, mountaineering it may not have been, but magnificent it surely was. And that's the general vibe with the climbing community. They love an underdog like that. They love somebody that is seemingly taking on the impossible. And although there is, perhaps you would say, an astute way of climbing some of these mountains, be it Denali in North America or Aconcagua or Everest, in truth, if you want to go there woefully underprepared, in your tennis shoes and give it a damn good go, well, the community, they might frown a little bit, but deep down, they're actually going, good on you. That's kind of the way it used to be done before commercialism came into things.
Let's talk about commercialism then, because I even came across a thread on Twitter this past week, and I think for years these kind of videos have been circulating about how there's like a line at Everest. There's like a line of people at the top, and it's like it's almost like Disneyified. You know what I mean? Where tell me a bit about that. Has it kind of lost its allure?
Yes and no. I mean, commercialism has made, not just Everest. I mean, there's a number of honeypot mountains around the world. I mean, you could say, well, Mont Blanc, potentially Aconcagua, though maybe a bit less so, but certainly Everest. Commercialism has made these mountains a lot more accessible. So no longer do you need to be a super accomplished climber to go to Everest. Somebody is going to accept your hard-earned cash, put together the logistical wherewithal that's needed for you to have an attempt on Everest. And this is what I mean by the underdog. It would be good that if everybody went to Everest, actually did some preparation, but not everybody does. And what this means is that there are more and more people on Everest. So this year there were about 415 or 420 permits issued to paying clients like myself. The Sherpas don't need they don't need to pay for a permit. They can just go there and climb. So there's about 420 permits issued to
Per year.
clients.
That doesn't sound like that much, because I was seeing videos where it was like 40 people in a row.
Yeah. But you have to remember that you can't climb Everest all year round. You can only climb Everest in a very specific season, and that's generally post-monsoon. And then, so what happens? You can only really climb. You can climb it not post-monsoon, pre-monsoon. You can climb it post-monsoon as well, but nobody really does. So it's pre-monsoon, and that's essentially May. That's when all the summits occur, in May. And then not every day is summitable. So what happens is everybody gets channeled into a few days in May because of the weather, because of the jet stream. And so what you get is you get these 420 people being supported by, I think it was this year, 600 plus Sherpas. And there's not every day is summitable. Not everybody has a depth of experience like my clients might have. Not everybody has bought into a really good logistical outfit. So there's some renegade outfits out there that will take your cash and not give you very much. And then what we see is on certain days, it only happens. Well, it happened twice, two days running. I think it was something like May 21, May 22 this year. They're good weather days. They're late enough in the season for most teams to get all the logistics in place. Everybody's getting the same forecast, and everybody looks at that day and go, May 21st looks like a good day to summit. Come on, let's go. And Everest is a big mountain, and Everest can absorb lots of people apart from summit day. Summit day, it all narrows down into that summit ridge. You probably, just Google it now. Just, you will find a picture with 30, 40, 50, 60 people literally stood there in a line waiting for their turn to shuffle forwards. That for me is not mountaineering. That for me is the cesspit of commercialism on big mountains. And touch wood, thus far, I've always managed to avoid that by either going a little bit earlier, by choosing a day where perhaps the weather's not so good, so there's not going to be so many people, by having a smaller team, by being more agile. There's a number of ways that you can avoid that. But you are absolutely right. Your terminology of Disneyfying the mountain is very accurate. The industry has pretty much advertised itself that it can almost get anybody to the top. And because of that, if you got enough cash, because climbing Everest isn't cheap. And if you got enough cash,
20 grand, something like that.
Oh no, you're talking like realistically $70,000-$80,000 upwards, and the sky's the limit. Yeah. So
80 grand.
Yeah. So as from next year, as from next year, just the peak fee, so to be allowed to climb the mountain, is $15,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not. And
I heard it can
unfortunately,
be cheaper depending if you start on the China side or something like that.
China side is a little bit cheaper. Yeah, the China side's a little bit cheaper, but not significantly so.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the media love Everest. Yeah, the media love a disaster. The media love bad stuff, don't they? It's one of the reasons why I don't read the news. I deleted all my news apps a number of years ago. I don't take any news on board. But the media love all that, and they focus on Everest. But for 15 grand, which is a peak permit, you could go down to the Andes. You could go to Bolivia and hang out in, say, Bolivia all climbing season, pretty much, and climb to your heart's content and get so much experience, get so many memories that you can put away in your memory bank, meet so many different people, have meaningful. I mean, I'm not belittling Everest. Everest is a magical achievement, but bang for your buck, you don't have to look in many other places.
So tell me, what's your favorite climb in the world?
Everest has been such a big part of my life. And it's given me so much. Some of my very best friends are my Sherpa friends that I've met and worked with on Everest. It pays for my mortgage here because I go there for work. It pays for my mortgage here. So Everest would definitely be up there. However, if I was to pluck just one climb, it's such a nasty question. I mean, maybe something like Bianca Grat on the Pisbadil. No, I can't think what the mountain is. It's the most easterly 4,000 meter peak in the Alps, and the Bianca Grat, commonly known as the Stairway to Heaven. It's got a bit of everything. It's got some great rock climbing on it. It's got this sinusoidal, beautiful like snow ridge that literally seems to just wind its way up to the heavens. It's the most aesthetic looking climb you could possibly imagine. I mean, it's got romantic beauty to it. You can even get to the base in a horse-drawn carriage. You can't drive to the base; you have to walk 4 or 5 hours to get to the hut. And it's got a bit of everything. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, the Bianca Grat is something very special. And that's
I'm trying to Google it. I don't really see it. So BIA.
Bianca Grat, BIANCOGRAT, Bianca Grat.
Bianco Grat. Okay, yeah, got it now. Ridge.
I mean,
okay.
I mean,
only three reviews on here. It's not so well known, I guess. Or
I mean, it's a bit off the radar. It's never going to be that busy. I mean, in Europe, it's quite a sought after climb. I'll send you a friend of mine on Instagram posted this really beautiful little video montage of climbing it, I presume from last year. And
Peas
it's
Bernina.
Pisbanina, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's near. Oh God, I'm completely spacing this. There's a really famous ski resort nearby, like really high end ski resort, where the
Sure.
oh
St.
God.
Moritz is
St.
nearby.
Moritz, there we go. Yeah, St.
Yeah.
Moritz. Yeah, so really old school, beautiful like ski resort, and a lot of rich and famous used to, well, still do to a certain extent, still hang out there. But the Bianca on the Pisbanina, that's a beautiful climb,
Okay.
beautiful climb.
I think we just added that to a lot of people's lists.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, how much of mountaineering is like a technical achievement, a technical challenge versus a mental challenge, and one foot in front of the other, and wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it depends very much on what it is you're trying to climb. So for instance, Everest isn't technically that difficult, but you need the right mindset. I mean, you're heading up into what we call the death zone, an area generally above about 7,000 meters where life isn't really sustained, even with supplementary oxygen. But then on the flip side, you could go and attempt to climb the north face of Llano or the south face of Aconcagua down in Argentina, or Cerro Torre, and these are really full-on physical challenges. You need to be technically very competent. You need to be bold. It's going to be like really hard. The west face of Gasherbrum 4 in Pakistan, heralded as one of the alpine faces, or Himalayan faces rather, in the world. Is only seen maybe 2 or 3 ascents. The first ascent of it's called the Shining Wall. The first ascent of the west face of Gasherbrum 4 by Kurtika and Robert Schauer back in the 80s is still considered one of the ascents there's ever been. So to climb something like that, not only do you need to totally have your wits about you, you need to be very much on top of your game, world-class climber, but you also need the mental attributes that go with it. Because if you're launching up the west face of G4, it's going to be very dangerous. Your chance of success is probably going to be very low. You're going to have to dodge falling rocks. There's going to be, the whole thing, it's going to be like days of misery, and being scared and cold and hungry and totally strung out mentally. So you need the right mindset. So the two really do go hand in hand, because you could be the best, in theory, the best technical, physical climber in the world, but if your mind's not on doing a big ascent like that, you're not going to achieve any form of success. You're going to need to sit out bad weather at base camp, underneath the face, and the face is going to be looming over you, and it's going to be constantly trying to erode your confidence and your psyche to go and climb it. So, if you're attempting any big expedition, you need to be mentally ready for it.
And what does that mean, mentally ready?
So, I mean, I always tell my clients that when we're stepping into the arena, we want to be confident in our actions. We want to be confident in our fitness. I know this is probably a bit dark, but certainly on the big expeditions, when we go to Everest, because let's face it, people still die on Everest. You need your affairs in place, just in case. And that takes a mental fortitude to be able to sit down and have those very open conversations with people.
So you tell people, like, hey, go write your will before.
Yeah, I mean,
you
pretty
fly out.
much. Yeah, just make sure your affairs are in order. So, I mean, God forbid something does happen. And I suppose that's true of any adventure when you're stepping into the unknown, because you are leaving people behind, and those people are going to have to pick up, the threads or the mess, whatever you want to call it, if you don't return. So your affairs do need to be in order, and you need to be kind of at one with that, and those around you need to be a little bit at one with that, and your motives need to be right. I mean, to go to, let's use Everest as an example again. To go to Everest just because you want, a picture you can post on Instagram. Does that warrant the danger you're going to put yourself in? Well, I don't think so. I think the purpose behind the journey, whatever the journey is, yes, it's individual to you, but the purpose has to be meaningful. Otherwise, your dedication to whatever it is that you're embarking on is going to be fragile. And if there's any fragility in what it is, especially in climbing, if there's chinks in your armor, the chinks in your mental fortitude, then as soon as you get into any form of uncomfortable situation, you're going to be exposed, and your confidence is very quickly going to be eroded away. And before you know it, you're probably going to be on the first plane or boat back home because you're not mentally ready for what lies ahead. So, it's a myriad of little things, but they all need to be watertight. And I think that's what I mean by being mentally prepared for things.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be anything. I mean, that could be somebody cycling, around the world or across Europe or down the Americas, or somebody setting off on an ocean row, or anything that's got a degree of jeopardy in. You have to be ready to face whatever it is. And if you're not ready, then as soon as you embark on it, it's going to to a certain extent fall to pieces.
As we get to wrapping up, I had a random thought just about Latin America, South America, which is that maybe it's less known from a mountaineering perspective than obviously compared to the Alps, and maybe even compared to Asia there. Like maybe South America is like the last frontier of new mountains and trails. Do you think there's anything there?
Yeah, I think there is to a certain extent. I mean, certainly. I mean, climbers, are fully aware of the Andes, obviously, and the joy and the mountains that are there, but they're definitely less frequented
Mm-hmm.
than, say, the European Alps. I mean, the European Alps is just a huge playground. I mean, we have to think where they are. They're in Europe. There's these big conurbations all around. I mean, you can, from Munich, you can be in, deep in the Alps in a mere few hours. Whereas, the Andes are that much higher. Access is a little bit more difficult. So it's certainly got more of an expedition feel to it than the Alps. Arguably, it's still a playground, but it's a more serious playground. It takes more logistical knowledge and clout to get these climbs under your belt. And I think what some people think or say is there's a certain allure to the Himalayas, or let's go trekking in the Everest region or the Annapurnas, and there's definitely more literature about the Himalayas. So I mean, I wouldn't call the Andes a backwater, because there's guidebooks and there's local climbers doing amazing stuff, and there's lots of people traveling to the Andes, but it's certainly not on as many radars, I don't think,
Yeah.
as Europe. I mean, yeah, you got Alpamayo, you got Aconcagua and places like this, but people want to climb Mont Blanc. I mean, I don't know how many books about the Eiger, the Matterhorn, arguably the most photographed, most well-known mountain in the world. These are the places that people flock to. And then there's so much Himalayan literature from the early explorers, which is easily accessible, which are in people's minds, and they want to go and retrace these steps or go and see Everest for themselves or whatever it may be. Whereas the Andes doesn't have quite so much of that, which is good and bad. I mean, it's good because it means there's not so many people there. So you can go and have a real raw adventure yourself. And arguably is a little bit bad for the local people because tourists and climbers do bring in their hard-earned money and put it into the local economies and things like this. I've hardly scraped the surface of the Andes. I mean, I love to spend some more time down there.
Yeah, definitely a lot of potential.
I'll definitely get back. I was looking at my climbing program for Bolivia literally this morning. I got a client who potentially wants to go back down to Bolivia, and I'm so excited about going back down there. They're not difficult mountains, but they're beautiful, like Illimani or Juana Potosí. Juana Potosí is just outside La Paz. Some people say it's the easiest 6,000 meter peak in the world, if there is such a thing. And it's a pretty heavily frequented mountain, but it's nothing in terms of footfall compared with any of the known European mountains. And it's beautiful, and it's so accessible from La Paz. He's literally a couple of hours, in a taxi, climb up to the mountain hut there, and then off you go the next day. And the sunrise from the slopes of Juana Potosí is just beautiful. It's 6,000 meters. It's fab. It's literally on the outskirts of La Paz. It's amazing.
Yeah. La Paz is a wild place for sure.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
There's a lot we could have got to in this podcast. Only so much time, but I think we got to wrap it up here. Got a little bit of a hard stop. So, Ken, why don't you take this time and kind of share any final message with the audience? Obviously, all the links will be in the show notes where to your website and so forth for people to get in touch with you. But anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, and this is slightly cliched. Your dreams don't come real unless you want them to come real, and more often than not, whatever it is that we want to embark on, it seems overwhelming, and you just got to take the first step. And if you're brave enough to take that first step, it doesn't matter what it is. You might want to, go trekking round like Ushuaia, or maybe you want to sort of row across the Atlantic, or cycle this, or whatever the adventure might be. Maybe you want to change jobs or retrain as a chef, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless you believe in yourself and unless you're willing to take that first step. And more often than not, as soon as you take that first step, it snowballs. And before you know it, you're on it. And that is just crucial. And you mentioned I speak in universities, I speak to commercial organizations, and occasionally, and I always do this for free of charge, I drop into local schools. And I always tell the pupils, the children, whatever you want to call them, because they are the most impressionable and arguably the most important, because they hold our futures in their hands in many ways. And it's just like, follow that dream, and don't let anybody tell you, or don't let anybody take that dream away from you, because it is your dream, nobody else's. And have the confidence in it, and have the confidence to make those first steps. And if you're willing to do that, then there is a high probability that dream is going to come to fruition, whatever it may be. So I think that is the single parting shot that I would like to leave with the audience.
Just start.
I mean, it's I'm going to steal it from Nike. Just do it. I mean, literally, just do it. And you'd be amazed at where it's going to take you, and who you're going to meet, and the communities that you're going to drop in. It's phenomenal.
Amazing. Quick note, when we say bye, hold on for a quick sec so that the audio can upload in the browser.
I've made that mistake before. I had to re-record a whole podcast with somebody because it didn't upload properly. Yeah, so been there, done that mistake.
So this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today, Kenton Cool, Mountaineer. Wherever you're listening to this, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests, and you won't want to miss anything. Thanks again to the audience for listening. Thanks to Kenton. Ciao for now.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by BitRefill. BitRefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. Introducing Rolf Haltza's Paycheck Multiplication Layering Method, a revolutionary approach that redefines the traditional career path. This is Rolf's new Done With You program, where he'll work with you to implement job stacking for yourself. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, are you ready to step out of the shadows of job insecurity and step into a world of career abundance? Then just click the link in the description of this episode, book a call with Rolf, and start walking the path of unleashing your earning potential with job stacking.